Cameras happening. I'm going to ask a favor as we're getting everybody in, which we know is always going to take a minute or two. If you notice that you don't have your name on, oh, Tiana, you fixed it. Never mind. Tiana's on it. We just didn't even know.
I'm here. Hi.
Hi, Tiana. Hey, Kristen, it's so lovely to see you. And Lisa, and we're getting some familiar faces for our small business survivalists in here. We are going to ask for those of you that can, if we love to see faces, and we don't care if your hair ain't cute. We don't care if, we would prefer you to be closed, but you can Donald Duck it all the way if that is how you are rolling today. We just want to make sure that we see faces, and especially during the first part, it's okay to go ahead and unmute and say hi to some of the folks that you know. We are a strong collective here in Chicago. We're going to really launch in right at about 10:05. And first of all, Pilar, I want to say that picture of you is just absolutely killing it. That is
thank you, Marie. Good morning. How are you?
So I want to give you a little bit of a heads up. As you can imagine, the Len Mayersky, who is coming to us from Fifth Third, who I can see some Len face right now, 30,000 applications.
Give or take.
Give or take, on his desk right now for the minute they say that those things have got to start processing. So he's going to be with us briefly. He's not going to be able to stay for the whole webinar. But we are just super blessed to have him as part of the call, because, boy, I don't know about you guys, but if I go through one more website of just absolute nonsense and can't get some real answers, I'm going to lose my mind.
Mine's already gone.
Oh,
yeah.
I know. Is that a Chicago skyline picture behind you?
I don't know.
Oh, it's just randomness.
I'm thinking Italy. That's what I'm thinking.
Then you should get some dolphin stickers and just put the dolphins right in the canal. All right, and guys, just to give you a little bit of the rules of the road too, as we go through, if you have a question, we're going to leave 5 minutes for Q&A at the end of each speaker's piece. Put your questions into the chat so that when we do get there, we can get to them as quickly as possible. We're going to do about 5 minutes of Q&A for Mr. Mayersky, and then for Rachel, when when Michelle's done, we'll have a little bit more time as she goes over some of the legal aspects, because I know that there's going to be a lot of questions there. But we will be following up with resources, assets, and information for you to connect with. So please don't be shy. Make sure that you get as much of your questions answered as possible, and then we will make sure that you've got some additional pieces. I also do want to give the caveat, the legal disclaimer. Y'all ready?
Yes.
Michelle cannot offer legal advice over the internet to someone who is not her client. So she is going to be giving you the facts and just the facts. But if you would like to have a deeper conversation with her about your business in particular, if there's a particular nuance, please know that needs to be somebody's got a train going through. That needs to be a question that's asked directly to her, and she'll help you get through that process so that you can be well taken care of. And that's the purpose of this. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Marie, and I'm the owner of @Revenue, which has in one shape or another been a small business resource in Chicago for 20 years. And we are putting the Small Business Survivalist series together because we love you guys. And we know that there's nothing more precious to a small business owner than our network. If you are going to share via social media, which we highly encourage, I'm going to put the hashtag into the chat window for you. And we do appreciate the shout outs, and we welcome you to share this information with anybody that you believe that will be helpful for. When we send the follow-up email, that is the content in there is open to anybody that has a link. They don't need to sign into anything to get it. So please, please, please don't shy away from sharing this with the great people that are in your network as well. So with that being said, it is my absolute honor to introduce somebody that I have been blessed to call a very dear friend for almost 15 years now.
Yeah.
We met when we were business babies. Len Mayersky has been a business banker in the Chicago area for how many years now? Huh?
10. So
10 or so, and
years.
starting in the community bank realm, Len has worked for a couple of really, really awesome banks. My favorite being MB Financial, but we know MB Financial was acquired by Fifth Third.
Yeah.
And so he comes from that small business community focused banking backgrounds. And as he has worked his way up in his career to VP level and added MBA to his title and done all of these incredible things with his career, what he's really done, and I'm going to just speak from personal experience, is through all of the change and all of the big brands that he now represents, he has managed to stay a community banker. There has never been a bank that I've worked with, and it's not the bank, it's a little Len specific, where my needs were truly understood, my questions were truly and authentically answered, and I was cared for by my banker. And so I am incredibly proud to have Len with us this morning, because I know he's going to give it to us straight. He's going to cut through all of the bullshit, and he will, even though he's got a lot on his desk right now, he will be able to connect you to the pieces that you need to keep your businesses going. So without further ado, Len, do you have do you have slides that you are going to share?
Just a couple of pages, just what's still out there available for small business.
Okay, so when you do have those documents, just go ahead and press the green screen share button at the bottom of your screen, and then we'll all be able to see what you've got. Or if you need us to pull up a document, we can do that as well.
Yeah, could you do that?
We can do that.
Hold on.
That's all right. Do you want the at revenue PDF or the membership advantage page?
Well, let's just do the loans.
Okay. All right. I'm
Not that tech savvy.
Gentlemen. Actually, Michelle, can you do that? I apologize, guys. I got a new computer last night because nothing was working anymore. So it looks like there's still a little setup that needs to be done. You can open the at revenue PDF doc, and Len, if you want to go ahead and start,
Yeah.
we'll get this taken care of.
So some of you, well, first, good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's well out there. Yeah, known Maria a long time. I see one of my customers is on there. I won't call him out though, but that's good to see. So he knows what's been going on over here regarding payroll protection applications. I'll start off with that one right now, because that's what everyone is hoping for, and for it to go through clearly. We are putting applications through. It's been slow just because there's been so many changes that have happened. Whenever SBA makes changes, it sets us back several hours just to make make the changes they made so we can put them on for us. And talking with other banks around the area, the larger ones, the smaller ones, we're all going through this mess together. Well, we put a lot through, but some aren't getting funded yet. They're waiting for this little electronic number to go with the application, and they're not getting that yet. And it's really, it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle. But I think as of today, we're all full go to just do it all at once instead of just this little pocket run, make sure it goes smoothly. It looks like, oh, here we go. Some of you probably already know this. The SBA Economic Disaster Loan that's out there. All the information is there on how to apply. The repayment options are there for you. The banks aren't working with that loan. That's directly through the SBA. And then there's the Chicago Small Business Resiliency Fund. I've had some customers have some good luck with this one. The one Mayor Lightfoot put together, Fifth Third Bank did donate $1 million to this one, which was good to hear. And so it's really geared toward the small businesses. It's what I love about it. You can tell by the details, you know, have to have fewer than 50 employees. The revenue gross less than $3 million. So really, instead of the real bigger corps going in there taking the funds, this is kind of like, yeah, no. So I'm a big fan of this one, and it's really helped out some of my my business customers. The CARES Act, woo, that's what we're doing. I just keep telling them because everyone's freaking out. If I was in their shoes, I would be freaking out too. And they all have my cell phone number. I've been updating twice a day. What's going on? I don't lie. There's about $270 billion, I think, left in the original. It was just approved to fill in another 250 more billion. So don't worry, it's all going to get taken care of. And I'm blessed that everyone's been understanding with this whole process, because I don't know how I would be. I always put myself in other people's shoes, and me being in your shoes and other people's shoes, I'm freaking out. I just don't know how. I have so much respect more. I come from a small business background. My parents owned an auto parts store in Gary, Indiana for about 25 years. And so I grew up in small business. I sound like a politician, but I grew up in the small business world. And so I get it. I know what they went through, and my heart goes out to everyone. And I just want, basically my whole weekend is going to be putting through applications. And I just can't wait to get started. So it looks like a full launch by noon today. And I'm very, very happy. And my customer who's on here, he's very happy too about that too. There's the SBA Express Bridge. I've had some customers apply for this, and it's really helped them out. I didn't think it would be as quick, but they were very happy with it. So I do suggest that one too. That one's been pretty good.
And just out of curiosity, when you say it's quick, are those people are they actually getting the funds, or are they getting the approvals?
They got funded, but this has been around for at least 3 to 4 weeks, I think.
Okay.
Quote me. So they applied prior, and so they have the funds. When you do apply, if you're going to apply for payroll and you do get one of these, you have to let them know on the application. What's that? Oh, it's the same thing. You can keep going. It's the same thing. Fifth Third, we do have a $100,000 unsecured line. It's a pretty quick process. 24 to 48 hours. A checking account's required. The current with the way we're at right now. The intro rate for 6 months is prime plus 0. Prime is currently at 3.25. It ain't gonna go higher in the near future. So right now it's what it is, and the application fee is waived. And that's really all I had about that. Just that what's out there. What I've learned through this whole process, yeah, I've seen some, I thought they still banked with me through the years of the various banks I've been at, but you know, they were complaining about they can't get a hold of anybody at their bank. And so Maurice, I've preached this for years. I said, you could bank with me or somebody else, whatever you prefer, what size of bank, whatever. Just know your banker. Know your banker, have a phone number. Because at some point, shit's gonna hit the fan and you want someone to call. You don't wanna be calling 800 numbers during this time, pressing 2 or 3. You gotta call somebody. I had customers refer their small business owner friends to me asking questions because they can't get a hold of anybody of where they're banking. So I think maybe through this whole process, people maybe start to understand more like, yeah, I do need to know who my banker is. Like it could be me, anybody else. Just know who's handling your accounts, because something's going to happen. I didn't think this would happen, but I was thinking in terms of, oh, I got fraud in my account or something like that. I didn't think global pandemic at the time, but that's the stage we're at right now. Yeah, so my laptop and phone all during this whole point has just been open and just emailing everybody who's been contacting me.
And so,
Yeah.
Len, one of the questions that I wanted to ask is, when we're preparing to apply for these, and it's probably not like loan applications in the past, and some of them are very quick, some of them are much more detailed. Do we know what is preventing some of the loans from going through, or what's actually making them look more favorable?
In terms of my experience with this payroll protection plan, it was rolled out too quickly. It was too fast. It has to be way ahead of time. Said, okay, April 3rd, we're going live, and then April 10th, that's when independent contractors go on. They notify the banks the night prior at 7 o'clock. Okay, here's your guidelines we want you to follow.
Yeah.
And God bless the banks that tried to do it. Systems are crashing. We'll put through this one part. We'll call you back when this part's ready to go. And then, okay, oh goodness, fix that problem. So the more you try to do, the more roadblocks that just keep piling up. So that's really the problem. Is what we've gone through too is like, okay, when we're putting in, if there's complex ownerships, that's becoming an issue. And so there's some we're just going to do paper applications because it's just like not nonprofits.
Right.
Well, how do you prove ownership? Of course, because no one owns the non-for-profit. And so today's like, just do the paper apps. It's much more simpler than putting information like that through this application process on the system.
Okay.
So something like that.
We've also got a question about freelancers, and I think this is a great question, and this may be kind of a I don't know if it's a joint Michelle-Len question, but a lot of us have hub and spoke organizations where we have very small employee contingencies, but then we have freelancers that we work with sometimes all over the country. With the changes that have happened in the way that freelancers and contractors are seen almost as employees now, how do we account for that? And what's available for those of us that have limited employees, but lots of contractors that were responsible for 50% or more of their book of business?
Michelle, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so PPP wouldn't be appropriate, especially if you're not paying yourself as an employee. Then correct me if I'm wrong, I'm telling everybody to apply for the SBA EIDL loan to at least try to get that grant. Even that, though, new rules came out about that, and they might be distributing funds based on number of employees. And then maybe the Chicago Resiliency Fund, I don't know. The other thing I would look at, although Illinois is not ready yet, is the CARES Act expanded unemployment eligibility to some self-employed freelancers, independent contractors. Last we've heard from the IDES is don't apply yet because they're not ready for those applications, but at some point that expanded eligibility is something that's available.
Okay. Perfect. And I know we've got a couple of nonprofits that are here on the line with us. Len, you had mentioned paper applications for nonprofits. Where would people access those?
I think every bank kind of has their own.
Okay.
I was given an application for them to use. So I already shot it out to a couple of my customers already and got it back, and we're getting it through. I would contact your lender just to make sure.
Awesome. Well,
Yep.
And guys, I do just want to back up what Len said. I have, even when they went through the transition from MB to Fifth Third, and I only had a portion of my accounts with Len, there was never a moment that I put in a phone call that I didn't get a call back. With that being said, I have the number of my U.S. bank banking person. I haven't been able to get a hold of him for 9 months, let alone the past 2 weeks. So I encourage you to connect with Mr. Mayersky, and if you've got the opportunity to become one of his beloved clients, I'm just going to throw a high recommendation out there. And that's not just because we have our monthly crab leg dinners. There's lots of benefits.
I do want to add one thing. There are some institutions, there are a couple people I've been working with, prospects or whatnot, that their institutions aren't taking these CARES Act applications because they're not a provider for some reason. For the payroll protection, they can't take applications. We're hoping next week we can start to bring in some of those. Right now, we just want to concentrate on our base right now, get them through the queue, it's a big queue, get them all through that, and then we'll take on some new customers. Because the banks, what they do is they use their own liquidity for the applications. They use the liquidity, and then the federal government, they give the money back. And so that's what kind of why they want to concentrate on their customers first.
Yeah. And Kristen, you just popped out a question about being with a big bank and they've got nothing so far. Part of it's the bank, but for me, the most important part of that equation is the person that you're banking with. They will be the one to, if they can't, in my experience, if Len doesn't have it, he's going to go find it, and he will make the appropriate recommendations. So I know this is not, nobody right now is thinking like, boy, you know what'd be fun? Let's change banks. It's a little stressful no matter how you do it, but it is a great time to start being able to build at least some small part of that relationship. And then when it is appropriate to make a transition to a place that you know you're going to be cared for, heard, and just respected as a small business owner. I had a conversation with a client a couple of days ago who's got a 20-year-old business. She works with some of the biggest brands in Fortune 100. And she had a conversation with her lender and got a flat out no, had one of her male employees call back, approved within 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So it really is about the relationship. And we're going to provide you a couple of the documents that Len has sent out for us. Just know that we're all in this together, and Len is the absolute exemplification of what that is.
Is my contact info there too? Yes,
it is, sir.
Awesome. Any questions, feel free to contact me, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Thank you. And so next we're kind of going to dive into the legal side of things. I have really had a wonderful time not only getting to know but work with Michelle Green, who is the owner of G&G Office Law. And what makes her so incredibly unique is that she's a small business owner first and a lawyer second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. But she bootstrapped her company from a two-person. Her first company was a two-person tutoring operation that she and her husband were able to turn into a multi-million-dollar online learning company. And as she started her law practice, she took a very different model than I've seen almost any other law firm do. She really understands the needs of small businesses and has aligned not only her services, but a team of specialists to be able to cater to that small business experience. So her clients and her expertise really combines to offer the folks that she's working with not only the insight of building and selling a multi-million-dollar company, but bootstrapping a law firm on the other side of that and building from scratch again. She also is a prolific writer, and the content on her website is going to be tremendously valuable for you. We're going to give you access to some of those pieces as well. And we also get the absolute benefit of her not really dealing in a lot of bullshit these days. She gets straight to the point and gives you things that you can use right away. So with that being said, Michelle, I would love to hand it over to you. Oops, we're going to unmute you, love.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to share my screen here. I pulled that. So like Marie said, I am a business owner as well. I am the owner of my law firm, and as a lawyer, this is a very difficult time just given the incredible amount of change and new laws that has come up and new information on a daily, hourly basis that we're working really hard to try to keep up with. And then also from a business owner, trying to make sure that myself, I'm applying for every financial resource available, trying to make sure that I'm helping my team in that way. So I have a ton of information to go over, and what I've found that's most helpful is maybe just giving a broad overview of all the information I have available and then leaving a lot of time for questions. Len had to go, understandably. We're very, very, very lucky that we were able to talk to a banker today because those people are insanely swamped right now. But my clients have been applying for all of these financial resources, and we've been helping them sort of keep track of everything that they've been applying for and keep it updated. So if you have questions for me about that, let me know. I didn't include any slides about it. I was letting Len cover it, but probably most of the questions are going to be about that, and that is fine. But I'll start with just quick ways of reducing expenses. So cash flow, main thing is getting more money in, but also during this time, I know that everybody is sort of looking for ways you don't have money, you have to cut in areas. So starting with just a list of places you can call and say, hey, we don't have the cash flow coming in that we used to have. We don't know if we'll be able to pay. What our recommendation is open the lines of communication as soon as possible. Get that conversation going to try to cut back on those expenses. So I provided a list here. Sometimes it's just hard to know where to start. And then the legal side of things is when you do call, ask for their name, figure out who you're talking to, ask for an email address, and then follow up. So the key is if you are modifying one of your contracts or agreements or all of your contracts and agreements, get it in writing. And at the very minimum, just send a follow-up email. Say, hey, thanks for talking to me. As we discussed, we agreed on this. Be very specific about what you agreed on, and then give them an out. Say, hey, if this isn't what we agreed on, let me know. And then if they don't respond, then you know that you have that tacit agreement that if something came up down the line, they didn't agree with you, at least you have something in writing. For contracts, more formal contracts, like contracts with your clients, you have to probably be a little bit more formal than that. So pay attention to the provisions. The provisions to look for in your contracts, if those need to be amended, probably our first clients to call us were our event industry clients. They're all getting rescheduled. Those definitely need to be amended. And then it sort of goes down the line. There's sort of a domino effect. Lots of people are talking about force majeure clauses in the contracts, but actually those clauses are interpreted very narrowly and don't usually cover coronavirus situations. Instead, what you should look for is the termination provision in your contract. What does your contract say about what happens when it's not able to be upheld? This is very commonly missed, but very important contract provision. So if your contracts don't have that clause in there, that's a sign that you need to be working on your contracts for the future. And then the other important part to look at is the modification clause. So that email that I had up just a second ago, that might not cut it if your contract language says any modification has to be in writing, signed by both parties. If that's the case, make sure you do it that way. If you do have a contract that needs to be modified based on the new situation, we recommend that you and the other party enter into an addendum. Just everybody be on the same page, get it in writing, get it signed, and then you know how you're moving forward. And then in future contracts, especially if there's no termination provision, make sure that's there. And then some business owners might even want to think about, do we need a provision that covers coronavirus situations, global pandemic situations specifically? I think the information that we're getting now that we've had this happen, it's not necessarily going to be the last time that business is going to be impacted by this situation, or maybe even another one in the future. So think about head to that. So just overall points about contracts: no, they can be renegotiated. First step is opening lines of communication. Get any modifications in writing. And then think about future contracts as well. Okay, so that was reducing expenses, and then two quick things that I'm gonna go over. Sick and family leave. I'm going to talk about the Families First Coronavirus Act, which I think that a lot of kind of got buried there, but it's an opportunity to have some reimbursement, maybe. And then I'm going to talk about, do you have to make decisions about employees to cut costs, and what does that look like? So for sick and family leave, before the CARES Act was passed, there was another law passed called the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And this requires 2 weeks of emergency paid sick leave available to employees. And this, for some reason, applies to small businesses. It's employers with 500 employees or less. And it covers a wide range of employees. So employees that are subject to a government quarantine, then there's a question, is that everybody? Employees that are told by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine, employees that are sick with COVID symptoms, and then there's the second category of employees that need to care for somebody or need to be home from school, be home with their kids who are home from school. So under this act, for numbers 1 through 3, so the employees that are personally affected themselves or showing symptoms, they need to be paid at their usual pay rate, but it's capped at $511 per day. And then the second group of employees caring for others, they must be paid 2/3 their typical pay rate. The reason I'm bringing this up in the cash flow webinar, though, is there's a reimbursement provision in the law. So employers are supposed to be reimbursed for 100% of the costs under this act, including health insurance act costs. So how it usually will work is it's supposed to be offset against your future payroll taxes. And then if it goes above the amount that you would pay in payroll taxes, then you would get a refund. So that's a long process, and a lot of businesses just don't have that amount of money to front in order to be able to cover the sick leave. But the IRS is supposed to send a refund. There's supposed to be a way to get the employers the funds now through the IRS. We posted the link to the form to do that here. This just went into effect April 1st, I believe, beginning of April. So we haven't had any employers who've had to provide sick leave and then be able to get reimbursed yet. So we'll have to see how the process works. I will say the Department of Labor, the IRS, was a little bit slower than they should have been in getting out the rules and regulations, unsurprisingly. So I don't know how the process is going to work. So for compliance for this, make sure you post a poster. I provided a link to that. You can just email it to all of your employees, since everybody is working remotely these days. If they're working, it wouldn't do much good to post it in the lunchroom. And just note that Chicago and Cook County, they have their own sick leave ordinances. This sick leave is on top of that. So what you should do is if your employees need COVID related sick leave, have them take that sick leave first, then they still have their Chicago sick leave available to use right after, or they still have it in their bank for later for the next time they get sick. And then there's family leave too. Let me know if you have questions about that. We're saying it's a little complicated, so it sort of depends on each specific employer situation. All right, so the last part that I'll go over about cash flow is I know I've had the worst conversations in the past 3 weeks talking to business owners, really upset, having to make really hard decisions about what can I do with my employees. My business is shut down. I can't open. I can't pay them. Do I need to lay them off? Do I need to cut their hours? How does it work? So just some decision-making considerations. In Illinois, employment is default at will, and at will means either the employee or the employer can terminate the employment relationship for any time and for any reason, except for illegal reasons, or if for some reason they opted out of at-will employment. So if you're to opt out of at-will employment, some employment relationships, you see the employees can only be terminated for cause. If that's the case, then they've opted out of this at-will relationship, and that's just a sign you need to pay attention to how can we end the employment relationship. Some employers have gotten in trouble by saying, hey, we don't know how long we can keep you on. We'll keep you on for 6 months and then reassess. So if you have language like that written down anywhere, pay attention to it, check with a lawyer and see it. Does that promise that the employee gets to work for 6 months guaranteed, or what does that mean? And then illegal reasons, discrimination. So pay attention if the employees are part of a protected class, you absolutely cannot terminate employment for that reason. But you also want to be careful to make sure it doesn't look like you're terminating employment for those reasons. So based on race, gender, LGBT status, that type of stuff. And age over 40. That's something that people miss a lot.
Over 40?
Mm-hmm.
When did it get to, it's 40.
I know.
That's
I said that in a
very young.
presentation a couple of weeks ago, and I like second guessed myself. I was like, can that really be right? I'm almost 40. I don't feel, yeah. But if you're like, so pay attention. So if you are terminating a group of employees, you know, maybe half your employees, and it just happens that the group of employees that you are having to lay off are all over 40, and then there's this other group that you're keeping on that are under 40, I would recommend, that's something, that's sort of a red flag you want to pay attention to and maybe nip in the bud before it turns into a problem. And there's ways to do that. You can get a release agreement. And then retaliation is another illegal reason. So retaliation for being a whistleblower, like maybe if there are complaints about safety issues, that could open up a potential claim, or there's retaliation provisions in the sick leave statutes. So pay attention to that. I love small business owners because they care about their employees and the people that work with them so much. So they're all asking about what benefits will be available to my employees if unfortunately we have to let them go. So they can likely apply for unemployment benefits. They may be able to receive 47% of their wages, plus the CARES Act provides for another $600 per week. But do know your employer contribution rate, so like the percentage amount, that weird number that's really hard to quantify, it may go up. There's been no changes to that in the emergency rules yet. And then the PPP, the payment protection loan that Len was talking about, just to know there's a provision in that, because that covers employee payroll costs. And so how do layoffs affect that? If the layoff or reducing hours of your employees happened just before the act was passed or within 30 days after it passed, you can hire back to the same number of employees you had before the crisis by June 30th and still maybe be eligible for forgiveness. So that's something to look into more. If you think that that's going to come up as an issue for you, like, look into it and make sure that you're following those rules correctly, because that's the kind of rule that's going to be changing sort of day to day, hour to hour. Don't think that we 100% know the answer to that. Yeah. Just some tips about the process. If you are worried about one of those claims, you could consider a release and waiver of claims. Just know that you have to provide severance pay, because if you have your terminated employee sign a release, there has to be you want to make sure that the language to prevent those types of issues, collect your company property. If you have issued laptops, the longer you wait to get it back, the less likely you are to get it back. Revoke the access to the email and stuff right away, we recommend, unless you're on furlough. And it's tough. I mean, these are old guidelines. With this situation, I know that the messaging of keeping your employees and hopefully being able to bring them back, you might want to change the messaging. And then definitely make sure you're informing them of COBRA rights and unemployment rights. You're required to do that. And then the last thing I had to talk about was unemployment benefits for business owners, but I think somebody mentioned even in the chat, CARES Act expanded eligibility for this to self-employed people, to independent contractors, but IDES, they're not ready for these. And Governor Pritzker is saying it's going to take a long time for them to be ready, unfortunately. So that's a lot. I know it's a ton of overwhelming information, but I'm sure there's tons of questions. So I do want to open it up and have time for questions.
I think a lot of the questions that we were getting is, if we are a sole prop, where do we go? So it sounds like the answer is to go to the unemployment benefits for business owners when that gets up and on its feet. One question that I have is, so many of us are focused on taking care of our clients. If we were to apply for those unemployment benefits and we're still working to take care of our folks, what would that look like?
I know, and we don't have the rules for that yet. Mm-hmm. But I'm assuming it would have to look like you have to prove that before you had a certain amount of money coming in, and now you don't have that amount of money coming in.
Yeah.
And in general, people that are getting unemployment benefits, they can work part-time and still maintain some unemployment eligibility. So hopefully that's the case for business owners too. We just don't know.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And it looks like we have a question coming through from Denise, and she's asking if employees were laid off, given severance and paid accrued vacation, but they didn't sign a release. Is that a problem, or does that just fall under at-will?
So they were laid off and they did receive severance? Yeah, that's fine. So that's fine. Our recommendation is, if you're going to pay a severance to your terminated employees, you might as well have them sign a release and waiver of all claims just to give that extra protection in exchange for giving that money. But there's your terminated employee hasn't released the claims, but if you're not worried about any claims, then it's fine.
Another question that we got, and I have a feeling I know what the answer is, but we're going to ask it anyway. Is there any word about when money actually might be released in any form to any humans in the United States?
So last I've heard, word on the street, because I am highly motivated as a business owner myself to keep on top of this and keep on top of it for our clients. So I would recommend everybody, if you haven't yet, apply for the EIDL grants. That's the SBA disaster loan. It's a short application and you can do it yourself. You don't need a banker for that one.
Okay.
Those, according to the CARES Act, were supposed to be processed and money in the bank within 3 days of them received. I applied as soon as it opened up, which was last week, Monday, and haven't seen anything or heard anything since then. And I know of 0 business owners who have received any of that funding. And now actually that's the one where they're saying they might be changing the rules a little bit, and they're only paying out $1,000 per employee, up to $10,000. We just don't know. But that's the one that has supposed to have a $10,000 grant available. Latest they're saying that I've heard for that is 3 weeks for processing, 2 to 3 weeks for processing, and then 3 days for it to hit your bank account. And then what I heard from Chase, who I did my PPP application through Chase, and I had a banker called me yesterday, and she told me that they didn't know how long it would take to process all the applications, but once you're approved, that one is taking 3 weeks to actually hit your bank account.
Okay, great. And then Lisa was trying to get just a little clarification regarding the termination clauses in contracts. Those provisions should be enforced regardless of the situation, correct?
Yes. So that's what termination provisions apply to any reason for termination. And they say if it's outside of your control, if it's because of the other party's breach of contract, so they didn't do what they were doing, different things might apply in each situation. But yeah, that's kind of what's nice about them, is it covers all of the unexpected reasons for termination.
Great. And guys, honestly, having the team at G&G go through and do a contract refresh for you is probably one of the best investments you can make, because they think of all of the things and I mean all of them. And they do have just a team of people that they're so attuned to what's happening and the way that small business owners need to be taken care of right now, today. It's not a relationship where you're going to call and expect Michelle to be like, oh, let's talk about retainers and general counsel right now during our first conversation. They've got a way to be able to get you exactly what you need as quickly as possible. And every business owner I know that has had the pleasure of working with them has simply raved. So my absolute recommendation for the work that her team does, every one of her lawyers not only comes at it with the same heart, but the same level of expertise, and it's just a finely run machine. Are there any, guys, go ahead and open up your microphones. Are there any additional questions that we've got here? Because I know I've heard a lot of things about, like, you know, we've got a termination policy, but now we've got people that are asking for refunds, and we didn't have a refund policy in there. What do those things look like, and is it possible to cover that in an addendum at this time?
Yeah, it is possible to cover it in an addendum. And the way I like to think about it is if you are going to give a refund or something, you can sort of try to turn it into a little bit of a negotiation. So uh, our event clients, a lot of them are trying to postpone dates instead of doing a refund. But even if you give a little bit of a refund and then you want something in exchange, that's something that you could sort of write down in a contract. I'll, say we'll give you a refund, and in exchange, if you're worried about something like defamation, or like if you're worried about bad Yelp reviews, you can say in exchange you won't say anything bad about us on the internet. That's actually quite common when in other situations where clients are demanding a refund because they're unhappy with the services. Then you say, sure, I'll give you a refund, just sign this and say you won't say anything bad about us.
Fair enough. Just out of curiosity, because I know that we've all seen an acts of God provision in contracts, and when I think about this, I'm like, oh God, this must be an act of God. What is it about this coronavirus situation that makes it not an act of God type of scenario?
Yeah. So a typical act of God scenario is you have an event scheduled for the next day, and then in the middle of the night, a hurricane comes completely unexpectedly and sort of takes down the building, or a fire comes and it burns the building to the ground. And there was no way to predict that it was going to happen with any length of time in advance of it. And it was highly unexpected. With these coronavirus issues, we sort of saw, okay, slowly this might be affecting some events. Or even with things like a governor's order saying, at one point there was saying, you can't have crowds over 10 people. There might be wiggle room for force majeure to go into effect if you didn't see that coming. Mm-hmm. The governor did that with no warning and did it the day before your event was to happen.
Gotcha.
That seems highly unlikely. Usually they say starting in 3 days, you can't have gatherings over 10 people. And that 3 days untriggers the force majeure because then you have time to prepare.
Fun. Fun. Good time.
But read your specific clause. Specific clauses could be written differently.
Okay. Yeah. I think everybody's brains are kind of like going, boy, I would love to know exactly what to put in there, but that is something that 100% we need to talk to our lawyer about and make sure that it's written. Service provider are offering, or even sometimes memberships within nonprofits and different organizations and associations. They've got to have that clause, and it needs to be specific for your organization, because it simply can't be a boilerplate that you pull off of legaldocs.com. We've got time for one more question if anybody wants to pop in. Great. So guys, we'll buy back 5 minutes of the day. We are going to be sending that follow-up email with everybody's contact information and the slides and the resources that we can provide. I want to thank you for hollowing out the time this morning to spend with us. I know that, listen, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I know that we're scared. And I know that we've had to let go of people possibly that was just heartbreaking, because these are not just employees. These are people that we picked to share our dream with. And that's not easy. So for those of you that have had to let go of people, one thing that I have heard a lot of is that those people are angry and they think that you're being mean and that it's, that they're just ruining relationships, but there's a grief process there. There really is. Whether they feel like it's a bad breakup or not, I'm pretty sure that you're not doing it to be mean to them. So if you need to to talk that through with somebody, make sure that you find the space. None of us want to have to let go of people. It does take an emotional toll. And then it can take a legal toll. So you've got resources here. You've got a network. You've got people that will make time for you. Don't hesitate to reach out and make sure we know how we can help. Deal? Nods, high fives. All right, guys, thanks again. I look forward to, before I forget, next week, we're talking about sales. I'm very excited to have Joe Mikuleff from Grow Up Sales joining us. He is one of the foremost sales trainers in the financial and banking industries. And then I happen to be somewhat of an expert in sales myself. We're going to be having the conversation about selling from the heart and what it looks like to continue sales in this market. Because if you are not serving people, if you are not out there finding a way to take care of them and make sales feel okay for you and them, you are doing a disservice to your community, 100%. As an attendee of today's webinar, you are going to get first access to those tickets. That event it's going to sell out within 2 or 3 days. So please make sure that if you want to be in that room, get the ticket now. If you know somebody that should be in that room, get the ticket now. We're going to be talking about some very specific techniques for you to be able to use to continue to have powerful sales conversations, because money has not stopped moving. It's simply changed. Urgency has changed. Fear has changed. And there is a way to sell from a place of love. So thank you all again. I will see you all very soon. Have a wonderful weekend. And happy Easter. Tell the kids the bunny got the virus. It's fine. I'll talk to you later.